Fanboy.
Part-Time Fanboy doing my thing.
Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Part-timefanboy.com.
This is Part-Time Fanboy, and I'm Kristian Horn. I'm here with Paul Edwards.
Hello.
Before we get started, I asked you on the phone before we got on the line, is Almost Human, like, I have seven episodes like left on my DVR. Have you been watching it? Like,
I haven't. It's just I've been so busy with like all these other shows that like I just can't. I can barely fit like the ones that I'm watching in.
I
know
am
what I mean?
so ready to erase all the episodes. It really, we saw the trailer at Comic-Con, and I mean, we saw the pilot, and the pilot was really good, and there was a lot of potential, but it's just really, I mean, honestly, the episode that I'm watching right now, it's a ripoff of an old Tom Selleck movie. Remember the Tom Selleck movie with the guy from Kiss and the Runaway.
Runaway, that's right.
Yeah, where the bullets can like track people down. That's what this is. This episode is about a guy who got killed because he created software that created bullets that can track you down. And I was like, really? It's just evolved into kind of like a cheesy cop buddy
That's
thing.
too bad. That's too bad.
With cool effects.
Did they at least cast Gene Simmons as the?
No, they did not. Well, I haven't run into so far. It doesn't look like no. They've introduced the arms dealers.
Yeah.
Carl
Carl Urban's got like a load of charisma to burn. And
definitely.
If this doesn't work out, I just hope that somehow a Dread sequel finds its way toward him.
Yeah. That would be. I would love to see a Dread sequel, or even a TV show if they could manage that, like on cable or something. That would be awesome. That's cool. All right. Well, so we're here to talk about. Well, what are we here to talk about? The Walking Dead.
We're here to talk about the Walking Dead season finale.
The season finale, which was like, well, what did you think of this episode?
I missed the first like 6 minutes.
Oh, you did.
Of it.
But you saw the good stuff, right?
But I think I came in on the good stuff. But the part that I came in on was with Michonne and Carl and Rick as they were sort of walking down the road and
Oh yeah.
making their way through. They just caught the rabbit when I came in. So
okay, cool. You didn't miss much of anything then.
Yeah, so I didn't really miss too much of what's going on. First of all, I guess backing up, it's been a pretty good season for it. Now that they're out of the prison, I feel like storytelling quality really picked up.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, which is exactly what happened in the comic book. Basically, like in the comic, that prison arc, obviously on the TV show, it didn't go for very long. I don't know if you're reading the series or were reading the series at any point, but there was a point where like the prison arc just went on forever, and it was just like people talking and getting to know one another, and it was just like, and I've said before on the podcast, when I wrote a review when I was writing for Ain't It Cool, and I coined the term Talking Dead because I was like, that's what they're gonna have to call this book, because there's nothing happening, like it's just boring, So
dude, Chris Hardwick needs to pay you like a royalty.
He needs to pay me a shitload of money. Exactly. No, I mean, whatever. I mean, but I definitely was the first one to use it in media. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's really weird. Don't you think that this last half season, like it's almost schizophrenic? Like the beginning of this season was, I thought, not very good at all compared to like last season.
Well, it started off, the way they chose to start off, by focusing on the governor as a character, rather than, everybody that we'd already sort of come to know and love, was an interesting choice. hey, I was willing to go along with it. It seemed like they were trying to humanize the bad guy and,
Yeah.
get into his head. So, I was all right with that. But, we all knew that he was going to come back around, to what he was. And it
Yeah.
was just a matter. And I don't necessarily think that the way that they chose to bring him back to that was, the most or original or anything.
Yeah.
But honestly, like once in that episode, once he came back as the big bad and they knocked the prison walls down, like things really, really picked up and like they built up a lot of steam.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's really interesting that you mentioned the governor because for me, like I liked the governor stuff. Like when they were just focusing on him, I was like, "Wow, this is really interesting because they weren't like it seems like for a long time this show has been tied into the constraints of the characters from the comic book. You know what I'm saying? Like I think like they've been focusing on a lot of characters that they feel like they have to focus on because they are in the comic book, and the governor, like in the comic, the governor was very different. I mean, he was like an awful, awful like human being. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so in this, it was just interesting to kind of go that way and just interesting to kind of see somebody who in his own mind was kind of thought that he was a good guy. You know what I'm saying? Thought that what he was doing was for the good of himself, it turned out, right? But the stuff that I had a problem with was when people started getting sick and they just kind of got dragged into that like little bit of drama. And Carol like killing two people who were sick and dragging them out onto the yard and killing them by herself. I just didn't buy any of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't buy her character making that turn and switching, over to like hardcore. I'm going to teach kids how to use guns and, during story time. It just didn't seem like there was anything in her history at that moment that would have made that drastic a turn for her, or that they had focused enough on her to show that, you know what I'm saying? So it seemed really, really, off kilter in the beginning of the season, but then exactly like you said, like once spoilers, they cut off what's his face's head,
Herschel.
yeah, Herschel's head, like it was like all bets were off. You know what I'm saying? It was like, here we go, we're off to the races.
Yeah, I was talking with my wife about the show, just before the prison break.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, different show. And yeah, I was saying, I feel bad. I think they're going to kill Herschel, and
oh really? So you called it?
yeah, well, because he's the moral center, and I think as a writer, writers love to get rid of their moral centers, because then it makes people do things that, are not really out of character, but it's what forces people to grow. When you have like the stability of, you've got that stable core. Once you knock that out, like almost anything can happen,
Yeah.
And I felt like Herschel was just gonna go, and
That's interesting.
And when he did, it's like, okay, well, now let's see what they do with this, because and it was interesting, tonight that they chose to have a lot of him in flashback.
Yeah, do you think that stuff was shot earlier? It had to have been, right? Because they were on the prison set.
Could have been, I mean, it's not too hard to, go back and redo the prison stuff, but it could have been stuff that they shot earlier in the season that they then put, that was already scripted in there, and then they went back and put it in. But it was a really interesting choice to flash back to. I was really glad that they did that, because it. Yeah, I like Herschel. Herschel's definitely one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the lessons that that we think he's going to learn from Herschel aren't necessarily the ones that he does.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really interesting because I never really thought about. I mean, obviously he was kind of the moral center to the group. I mean, I think the assumption is that because lead is sort of the lead Rick is sort of like the lead character, that he's sort of the moral compass that everyone goes by. And I think that's sort of been my frustration with Rick as a character on the show, not in the comic. In the comic, he's much more sort of like steadfast and much more sort of like he knows what he wants, whereas I feel like the character in Rick in the TV show, whenever they focus directly on Rick, I get really bored really fast because I feel like this is a character, or at least on the show has been, this is a character that hasn't shown much of a backbone and has kind of like let the winds prevail, and just been like, okay, I'm going to go with this person. I'm going to go with that person. And you saying that Herschel is the moral center, I'm like, oh, that makes much more sense. That's why he's much more likable, because he's got a center and he sticks to it. Whereas with Rick, it was like, well, I don't know, my best friend is trying to fuck me over, and do I want to be a bad guy? And then he does kill, he does end up killing his friend, like in the comic book, or actually his son does, and basically, then it's like, then he almost becomes Shane, right? Shane was the guy's name. I'm so bad with names, but
it's okay.
and then from then on in, it's just like, well, you killed the guy that you became. So like, what is that? So there was a, with Rick, when they focus on Rick, except for this particular episode, the finale, I feel like this finale has really, I don't know what it is, like shown Rick come to, growed up,
Well,
babies
actually,
all growed up.
It cemented his role as the moral leader. It's something that it's kind of interesting. I mean, this has been like one of the longest sort of slow burns. Of the lead character. He does have those like little defining moments, and it's kind of cool because like he always gets one line that sort of sums up what his character is going to be, going forward. He had that one line, when he sort of became Shane, where he's like, "This is not a democracy, this is a dictatorship here." That he had that, and then the closing line of tonight's show, like you realize who he is now. He's Herschel was the man that they all looked to, and he's the guy that everyone looks to now. And he's the guy who legitimately could get them through it.
Yeah. Well, that's it's interesting though. I mean, do you think? Because I mean, there was a time like in Marvel Comics, it makes me think of like Marvel, like about when I started reading like regular issues of comics. They started doing all these like big events, and one of them was Civil War, and like these things kept happening. That a lot of the fans, including myself, were like, oh, come on. And then you would read articles from the writers and they're like, no, dude, just hang in there. And it's all going to pay off. And for me, that's like really risky, because it's like, you can't just keep having things happen to characters, or characters behave in a certain way that frustrates the viewership, and, have them, go on faith, what I'm saying? And with me, it ended up me dropping, regular Marvel books, so like, but with The Walking Dead, I kind of hung in there. And I think it's because like the ensemble cast offered enough of other characters where it's like, okay, well, Rick is bugging me, but there's enough other like interesting people there to like, keep me engaged. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And this that's been, I think, the strongest part of the back half of the season is that you've had a chance for them all to shine.
Absolutely.
Now that they're all on their own, and you are able to follow a story about Tyrese where Tyrese isn't dealing with Rick, or where you're not having to sort of shoehorn in Michonne because she's cool or whatever. I mean, the characters really got to sort of do their thing without without, in a way, it's like without too much interference. They got to be really sort of who they are when they're not all together as a group.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. And especially in the case of, Tyrese and Carol. I mean,
Yeah.
that was like one of the most fabulous moments of television in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, really well done.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's funny because I really do think that in a way this is one adaptation because I mean, they said from the beginning that, we're going to try and stick with the comic book, but, Kirkman was like, look, we're going to go our own way. And I
Yeah.
feel that what we're talking about is very much like, in a way that this show has been hamstrung by its ties to the actual book. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like its need to focus, like you said, Michonne is supposed to be the cool one. And,
Yeah.
the only character that's really original that so many people have really latched onto is Daryl, Daryl Dixon, because he doesn't have to act a certain way or people don't have any expectation of him, because he's not
Right.
in the book. And that character has really become beloved to a lot of people, and me, myself included, because I really feel, and particularly that one episode with him, and the blonde, where they were holed up together, it was finally a chance for him to, you'd have those episodes with him and his older brother and stuff, but it was finally an episode for him to sort of connect with one person
Yeah.
and to like discuss and kind of decompress a little bit, which is something that he was never really, for some reason, able to do with Carol,
Right. Right.
And that's what this show needed.
What's also really good about it too is that, like, this is definitely a show about, with the exception really of Rick, I mean, this is a show about people who were nothing before this happened,
Yeah.
people who really had no direction, no purpose, no sense of, of who they were.
Yeah.
I mean, if these people were walking dead before the apocalypse.
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
interesting.
now that it's happened, these are the people who are able to live and survive. I mean, whereas somebody, some people take it like the governor did.
Yeah.
And sort of use it as a sort of an excuse to just let, their instincts for power run loose. Whereas, you've got other people like Daryl who it actually makes them a better person. And that's really sort of the interesting thing is sort of, what does happen to people in this situation,
Yeah.
and, this was, this season, you've really seen them for the first time. I mean, now that sort of the survival, they've had the chance to sort of exist and not think about survival for a while.
Yeah.
Now they're actually given the choice of, are they, going to do the right thing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I really feel like that's one of the weaknesses, or was one of the weaknesses of the show, and not so much the comic, because for the comic you got to see them struggling with the apocalypse for a while. But like in this show, you saw Rick wake up and he's like in the middle of it. You know what I mean? You didn't really see the downfall or the decline of a society, which to me is what is the most interesting thing of like any zombie, or apocalyptic movie, which is seeing the very beginnings of it all fall apart. You know what I'm saying? And to me, it's just like this last half season has given us the opportunity to see that, because that's basically what they've lost. They created like a society, a family together, and they got raided and the prison walls got torn down, and now everyone has to go off and survive on their own, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, it's, to me, that has always been the much more interesting part of any, survivalist apocalyptic story. And this season has really delivered. And I hope that, now that they've gathered all together again, I hope that at some point that they will, keep going in that direction, because that to me is the most interesting thing. Otherwise, you've got a situation like, I know I've talked to you about it before. There's an old 70s, BBC TV show called Survivors. It has nothing to do with the reality show, which is a bunch of people in the UK that survive a plague. There's no zombies or anything like that, but it's fascinating. I mean, it's just, it's 70s BBC production value, but it's just really well written, and it's kind of creepy and well done. And you get past the first series, and then you go into the second series, and it's basically, okay, they've kind of survived the downfall, and now it becomes sort of like, oh, are we going to build a farm? What kind of rules are we going to have in the society? And that to me is boring. I'm like, that's like Little House on the Prairie. I don't need that. So that's why I've really liked this end of the season. I think Walking Dead was settling a bit too much into oh, we're here, we're settling down. And for me, the more interesting thing is when things fall apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more dramatic when things fall apart.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. And I'd like to. I'm a big fan of the rebuilding too, actually, though, because it's like if you're given the chance to rebuild, what do you choose to make better? We've seen them rebuilding a few times, since then, and nothing ever sticks. That's really sort of the interesting thing about The Walking Dead, is that you're given the chance to sort of explore these little sort of, I guess, utopias in a way, they're different kind of utopias, different kinds of ways people think that the world should run, and none of it ever sticks. Even the group that Daryl falls in with here in the end, the sort of idiot, the idiot ravagers, they had their own code, they had their way of running things and making sense of the world. Not a particularly good one for anyone other than themselves, but the show even bothers to explore things like that. But that's what's interesting about this show, is really what can stick, what sort of a society could you ever hope to come up with, when everything in the universe is out to kill you? It's really, really dark Lovecraftian kind of thing at its heart, because that's really what, you can sort of rationalize, how the zombies couldn't really work, because of whatever. But it's
what's the point in
at
that,
this point?
though?
Yeah, at this point, it's just enough to know that there's just monsters everywhere that are just going to tear apart the world. Which is why I hope that they don't really try to explore what's behind it all kind of thing, which
I doubt that they will.
They're kind of threatening to. They kind of threatened to do with this other guy, but I also get the chance. It's also pretty obvious that this guy's kind of full of shit, and he just is lucky enough to fall in with a group of people who are gullible enough to buy his line of reasoning.
Well, spoilers. I mean, you for anyone who reads the comic book, and you guys already know this, but I mean, basically, do you want to know? Do you want to know what happens?
Well, I'm interested. I'm interested in seeing what happens on the show.
All right, I'll let it go then. I mean, I could tell you what happens in the comic book, but let me just say that you're a bit on the right track. You're a very astute gentleman. It's funny that you mentioned Daryl's Deliverance crew. That's what I kind of call them,
nice.
The Deliverance crew. But it's just it's funny because you said that they have a code, right? And that's where, to me, I was that episode, it came a little bit out of left field, where they were just so, we're going to take the boy, we're going to take the girl. And I was like, because I kind of saw myself in Daryl's shoes, where I was like, but you guys have a code, and I mean, you're not complete scumbags, right? And then it was but you are, it's almost like you kind of knew they were bad, but you didn't want them to be too bad, you know what I mean? But then they're really bad. You're I can't, there's no way I can justify any of this. You can sort of understand them wanting to get back for their friend being killed, but once they're we're gonna take the boy, which to me means they're gonna rape him.
That was pretty obvious what they were gonna do with Carl.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just no, this will not stand, and then which obviously leads us to the moment where Rick just I didn't see that coming. Did you see that coming? I thought a headbutt was coming or
No,
something.
that was amazing.
Yeah,
that
it was
just
astounding.
when he just essentially tears the guy's throat out with his
Yeah.
teeth.
Yeah.
You know, what made it so powerful is it was so unexpected. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that you expect from a walker, but not from a person.
Or
And
even the governor or someone like that. Like that's
Right.
the thing is like with Rick, they've set him up to be so, like I said, like a little bit like waffly, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term, if that's even a word, for him to just be like, you know, you kind of saw him like hulking out, you know, and
Yeah.
and at first I was like, oh wow, he's gonna kick ass and take names, and then he starts getting his ass kicked, and I was like, oh dude, because when he got his ass kicked by the governor, I was like, oh man, come on, really? They can't even give Rick this, like let him at least, you know, come tie, like come up even, you know, let him like fight. And but he couldn't. He got his butt kicked by the governor, and then it starts to look like he's losing again, and then all of a sudden he just whips out that move, you know, and it's just like, whoa, like that was a jump off the couch moment for me. Like if I didn't have a kid sleeping upstairs, I think I would have been like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
It was a big moment for him, because it is the moment, you know, where, you know, you realize, yeah, he will do anything specifically for Carl, but now you see that he's the guy who gets them through it. You know? Which is he's got the opportunity to be what everyone sort of thought he could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that this is the episode where I'm like, okay, like this is a guy who's going to get stuff done. And I was feeling that way a little bit in the second season, but then again, it seemed like he wasn't, like he started going, you know, his wife died and he started going crazy, and I was like, okay, you know, this character is just not going anywhere for me. Like he's just devolving into a mess, you know. And again, you know, there are expectations based on the comic book, which is like, yeah, that the character did go crazy in the comic book, but you had something like 50 issues. You know, there was more time to devote to that insanity and let it play out. Like on the TV show, it does. There's a little bit of a weakness of character. And at this point, he's doing like, I don't know if I could have torn somebody's throat out with my teeth. You know, if somebody's going after my kid, I probably would do something to even like where I wouldn't even consider, I would consider hurting myself. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, to that, like being a parent, I totally understand the savagery of that. You know, I'm not going to let anybody touch my kid. So like for me to see that as being the drawing point, like some big fat sweaty dude about to rape my, like the drawing the line, you know, for some big fat sweaty dude to just be like, I'm going to, you know, rape this kid. Like, that's just like, yeah, all bets are off. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, like you said, like for the rest of the episode, you're seeing Rick take the reins, you know, where he's finally like, I'm the guy. Like, I'm not even debating it anymore. I'm not gonna hem and haw about it, you know? Mm-hmm. And I really love that scene where he was sitting down with Daryl and he's like, you are my brother, you know? Like, I loved that brotherhood moment, you know?
Yeah. And you know, it was a nice moment for Daryl too, because, you know, when he's talking about how he didn't know how bad they were, you know, where I think you see you see how that time with Beth affected him too, because, you know, she's so optimistic and seeing the best in people, you know, like if he hadn't spent that time with her, he would have assumed that they were all shitheels, you know? And I think after that, he did want to have a moment where he believed the best in people. And, you know, it was really, really interesting. He's been kind of crushed in a way for a while. And, you know, you saw, and then, you know, as low as they've all gone, like, you know, you see that little glimmer in their eyes at the end of the episode, you know, of, you know, like somehow, like, we're going to fight back about this. So the big thing in the episode, like, they all get to Terminus, which, you know, which has all seemed from the beginning of the thing to be a trap to me, because I mean, you know, like It seems too good to be true, you know.
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen the zombie movies. We've seen 28 Days Later, There Is a Cure, and all that stuff. You don't go to, especially the place is called Terminus, for God's sake. Like, why would you go there? Like, it just makes no sense. Like, at least Rick and, Daryl and Michonne, they scoped the place out before they went in. I mean, Glenn, last week's episode, they just kind of like walked right in, and I was like, are you crazy?
Glenn, whoever's been writing for Glenn likely has let him do a bunch of really silly things, like running into the tunnel which is full of walkers, and
just go around it.
Yeah, he was like I feel like they've sort of lost Glenn's narrative a little bit, but maybe he'll have a chance to sort of get it back here.
Well, his narrative was Maggie. I mean, that's basically it, and that's why he comes across as a bit uninteresting, because that's all he has to care for, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's his big responsibility. He doesn't even seem to like really care for Maggie's sister that much, or be concerned with her well-being, which they are family now, right? So
yeah.
And
it's that they've got a good setup. I mean, let's see, we've still got Tyrese and Carol on the outside, heading toward Terminus. So they've got some people who can help them out. We don't know where Beth is right now.
Yeah.
She may be.
She got taken away in a car,
Got
but
taken
was there
away
some
in
kind of cross on it or something?
Or something like that.
Yeah.
It's possible that the Terminus people took her, maybe. Maybe they're eating her. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's right. That's what we're assuming that they're doing at Terminus, right? Is eating people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from the big pile of human carcasses that were sort of on the inside there, and the meat that they've been offering to people when they come in. That's what it seems like to me. I'm just guessing that they're a bunch of cannibals.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there was an arc in the show, in the comic, where they ran into some cannibals, but I think it was called like Fear the Hunters or something. And those people were actually hunting people. They didn't have a community. So it seems like they're combining something again. I mean, at this point, it really just seems like, as far as the show is concerned, they're not even following the comic book anymore, which is fine.
They should. I feel like the more you sort of go off of the narrative that you're basing it off, probably the better when you're adapting it to something different. I mean, like, look at Noah, for goodness sake, thank goodness Aronofsky, sort of decided to take his liberties and, make the movie.
How much is there in the book? There's not a lot.
It's like 80 sentences or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's not enough to build a whole script on.
I mean, and with The Walking Dead, you've got like all these seasons of, or all these like sort of arcs, and that's great, but it would just be sort of a waste to sort of slavishly adapt all of those to television. Got a chance to do something really new and interesting, and I think that they're doing a pretty good job of keeping it true thematically, to the source, but doing their own thing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they're going to do a spin-off apparently, or at least they're trying to, or they're talking about it. And to me, that seems a much more exciting prospect than the actual show, because this would be like uncharted territory. You know what I mean? This would be like something completely new, something that with characters that nobody cared about in the beginning, and it'd be interesting to see if it garners the ratings that the original show does. Because I mean, this is like the highest rated thing on TV, right?
Oh, is it? I know that it does really well.
I think it's the highest rated like drama on all of TV, like between 18 to whatever it is, 39 or whatever that demographic is. It's like it drags in like 3-4 million viewers or something like every week. I mean, it's insane, which is like, who thought that this could happen? Like that a zombie comic would be outselling like Marvel and DC. Like, we were just zombie fans, like dicking around, like just praying for something good to come along every like 5 years. Right. And then, all of a sudden it's just like huge business.
Yeah. Well, Kirkman's writing is really good, and
Yeah.
and I think that you know certainly. I mean, I was just interested when they announced that there was going to be a show. I was like, okay, like automatically, I was interested.
Yeah.
And I think that they've done a really good job of overcoming their limitations. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
because they've hit the wall a few times with this show to the point where
Oh,
I'm just like, oh my
absolutely.
God, like what's going on here? Like the farm nearly killed me.
The farm
Like
was, it's again when it seems like they settle down and they take too long in one location, and then it starts to become about like agriculture and who's getting along with who, and are we going to get food, and then my eyes start like crossing, and I'm like,
mhm.
I don't care about this. And it's the same thing with the comic. Again, in the prison arc, you didn't see a lot of zombies at all, and I'm like, look, I get that this is about interpersonal relationships, and I get that this is like that you need that in a show, but honestly, let's not forget what the draw was. The draw was zombies. The draw was the zombie apocalypse. And if you get bogged down in other things, then, like you said, it's just like for me, I go cross-eyed. I just
Yeah.
get like, oh, really? Come on. But I think the show has been very good about keeping the zombies around, because I don't think there's been like one episode without them.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie, as a horror fan, like that's what's kept me dragged in for the most part, is like, and I think the zombies have gotten better
Oh
too, to
yeah,
tell
yeah.
you the
The
honest
the
truth.
the quality of the makeup and the blending of the practical and CGI has been
Yeah. Oh
pretty
yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And what they get away with
Amazing.
is pretty astounding. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, so beyond. So I think this was like a really solid finale. I mean, I think it's, but after the Grove, I think it's probably the best episode of the series, at least, or one of, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's definitely the best like season finale that they've had. Like
yeah,
hands down. Like to where I'm like, yeah, I want to see what happens next tomorrow.
I know we have to wait till October, but honestly, I think Melissa McBride, if she doesn't get the Emmy and the SAG award for that, I mean, I just, there were so many moments in that episode in the Grove where I was just like, wow, wow, where I think, especially when you first had the big explosive moment of like where they realized like what happened,
Yeah.
and she's trying to talk to her, and I was just like, oh my god, oh my god, this is like, just watching her, it register with her was just like unbelievable. Like there was so much going on in her eyes. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
she's
and
solid actress.
and this show is like really really interesting in the way that it like sort of approaches kids, you know?
Yeah.
Um because like kids die in this show.
Yeah, yeah.
They, some of them, I mean, you had one who was just a budding psychopath, and
Yeah,
then I mean, Carl for a long time was on that edge,
that's true.
and it's really interesting to have a show that treats the kids as complete people and
Yeah.
characters who have their own stories to tell, rather than and that was I'm so glad that they've done that, especially with Carl, because for a while it seemed that he was just there to as a plot device. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
Carl runs off the farm,
Oh my God. Yeah.
wackiness ensues.
Doesn't anybody
Um,
watch that kid? Yeah,
and
yeah.
and now since they've had some of the new writers and showrunners and everything. I mean, it seems that they've really grasped the idea of how do kids live in this new world, and what does it do to them?
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with the way they've explored that.
Yeah, I mean, but outside of like an episode of like Law and Order Special Victims Unit or something like that, like when do you ever see anything on any show about child murder. Not that I want to see that sort of thing,
Yeah.
but that you would even touch the subject
Yeah.
of a little
Well,
girl.
I'll be honest with you, how many shows do you really see that have like kids on them, that aren't like sort of the just precocious little
That's
like
true.
monsters that people think that, that a scriptwriter thinks a kid is.
Yeah, yeah.
This is one of the few shows that, that features kids on a regular basis and, gives them stuff to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's really funny because when those two girls first showed up, I was a little bit like, I mean, that, like I said, that's sort of the beginning of this particular season, that started in October, didn't really, I mean, I was just like, wow, okay. I like this show. It is not my favorite show. Like Walking Dead has never been my favorite show, but it has been one that I really like to watch for some reason. I just find something about it engaging, but for me, it's not like, say, like Doctor Who or, gosh, what has been like another favorite, like Buffy or something like that. It's just been a show that I think is like really solid, and I think that has had some solid moments. And in the beginning of this season, I was like, okay, this is like what, season 5? And I'm like, am I ready to end this now? Am I ready? And then, the governor showed up and started cutting people's heads off, and I was like, okay, let's see where they go from here. And it's really weird because this season they got a brand new showrunner from last season, and last season was probably one of the best seasons, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that was a new showrunner too. And I remember you saying like, oh, here's a nice piece of cake. I hope you enjoyed it. You can't have any more cake. You know what I mean? Like we're switching showrunners on you. And it seemed like, I don't know if it took him like 6 episodes to kind of find his footing or something, but it seems like, okay, at some point they were like, we're going to go dark. Like, this is it. Like, we are talking. And that's the thing that I feel like they've never, I mean, they have, but they've never really delved really dark. And I think at this point, it seems like they're willing to go to that place, or as far as they can go. Yeah. Don't you think?
Well, certainly after tonight's show. Tonight was very, very dark.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's, again, what's going to sort of make Rick, seem stronger, in the long run, is that he is a guy who's willing to go dark, but he's able to pull it back. And yeah, I'm very, very excited. When like I said, when it was over, I was smiling because it's like, okay, yes, like it feels like this is for the first time, like all the little pieces fell into place and everybody kind of gets it,
Yeah.
And I'd really love to see what they manage to do with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love at the end where he's like, those people are going to be sorry. And you're sitting there and you're waiting. Sorry for what, Rick? What are they going to be sorry for? And I was just like, please don't go blank. Please don't. Because to me, it seemed like him and Daryl, the look on Daryl's face and the look on Rick's face, it's like they had formulated a plan or something, which I think they did. They must have formulated something to, like, if something went wrong, I mean, they buried those guns on the outside,
right?
But it's like, you still got to get out of that boxcar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the way I see it, it's like, no, like it didn't even matter whether they had formed a plan or not, like, at that moment, after everything like that they've been through, that they know that they're going to, get out of it hell or high water.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think that, to me, it's really funny because I kept thinking, what if Beth is the one that comes and saves them all? The little mousy blonde, you know what I mean? Like, she's the one who figures out a way to, because to me, it seemed like she got carted off by like religious fanatics or like white supremacists or something. Because that car I could have sworn I remember it this way, that there was like a crucifix or some kind of symbol on the back of the car, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I was thinking, we've got some like, crazy, religious order or white supremacists. And, there's been no clue as to what happened to her, right?
No,
I mean,
no.
just
So
nothing.
far they've they haven't done anything.
So right now, I guess the only people that are left, like you said, are Tyrese and Carol,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they're probably their only hope. I mean, and they were headed to Terminus, right? I mean, they got
Right.
delayed.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. They finally decided that they were going to go. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that with this half, it's so weird how something can turn around on you, like in a couple of minutes. Like, within 6 episodes, I'm like, okay, like it's finally caught me, it's finally got me where it wants me,
Yeah.
and I think I'm all in. Every season before this, I've kind of been like, it, I think it's good, but it needs something, you know what I mean? It needs, and it seems like it's finally decided that it's going to go to a place where, it hasn't been before.
Yeah, and I think what it needed was that time of all the characters away from each other because they had to be separate before they knew that they were stronger together.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I guess so. It's just, it'll be curious to see which arc, if they pick something up from the comic book, or if they decide just like that they're just going to completely go on their own. Because it definitely seems like Terminus is based on, if I remember correctly, it was like the Hunter's arc or something like that, and which also coincided a lot with them meeting the dudes trying to get to Washington. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like all that sort of stuff happening around the same time. So if they are going to reach where I stopped reading the regular issues around like issue 105, and
Okay.
I've decided to just like wait for the hardcovers, it's going to be a while before they get there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to happen. So I don't know. But I mean, this is season 5. How long do you think it's going to go on for?
Well, I mean, they're talking spin-off. I mean, how long is it going to be successful? I mean,
Yeah.
that's really that's the way usually they measure these things. But it's sort of a matter of when. I would imagine it's going to be sort of when AMC decides to choose to not ride that not ride that train anymore.
Yeah.
And if it's successful and if like it keeps doing stuff like this, I mean, it could easily go on for another 3-4 seasons.
Wow. I mean, that to me is just amazing, like a zombie show that just goes on. And the fact that it's just been so successful. I mean, Mad Men is ending like this season, which is like, oh, that's breaking my heart. But they've only been on like, what is this, season 5 or season 6?
I think this is 7 actually.
7. Oh, wow. Has it been around that long? I
Yeah.
think I was a late adopter when I think I just watched them, like rented them and watched them like all in a row, just pounded those out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
So this is,
it's and there's such a long time between seasons on Mad Men too. So
that's true. Well, they did have that hiatus of like a year, right?
yeah.
Where they were like almost striking or something like that. So where do you think that they can go at this point? Like Walking Dead, like do you have any ideas, like any theories? Because I know that you said like you had kind of called what's his face getting his head cut off.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna lose some people in
Oh, you think
in
so?
Terminus. I mean, I think so. I think they're probably gonna lose at least one more person in Terminus because have you can't have an epic battle without losing some people on both sides.
Yeah.
But the nice thing that's good about this is that they you lose some people, you pick up some new people, and that revitalizes their the overall story. Hopefully, they can get the girl who was with the governor's group, who was traveling with
Yeah.
Glenn and Maggie. Hopefully she'll like sort of stop being sort of a sad sack,
Yeah.
and show a little bit more of that fire that she had, when she was with her sister.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, it's like every time you lose someone, you've got to replace them with something, that's a little more interesting,
Yeah.
So, what will be interesting is when they start cutting deeply into people who we have invested a lot of time with, because Herschel was a pretty big loss. Yeah, but what about when they start killing people like Carol, or when they start killing people like Daryl? I mean, that would be huge.
That would be huge. It would be just gigantic. Did you think for a fraction of a second tonight that Carl was going to go, like at the very end of the episode? I thought they were going to shoot Carl. I was like, holy shit, are they going to shoot Carl?
Yeah, or I thought he was going to try something dumb and,
get shot.
Yeah, but he wised up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, I definitely have an idea. I mean, anybody who reads the comic knows one of the other characters that may go in the future, but I won't spoil it for you.
Okay.
But he doesn't go in this sort of arc, or at least the way it was.
It's a boy.
Sorry. But anyway, I mean, you don't read the book, so you don't know who's in the book and who's out of the book. So
yeah,
I didn't spoil that for you. But yeah, I think this has got me back. I mean, got me on board for sure. I was definitely sort of like a fair weather walking. I mean, I watched every episode, and you can ask my wife. I watched them on the night that they aired. They were not like sitting around in my DVR like
they do with
human.
me.
No, but I mean like there's definitely shows that I make an effort to watch right away. Like there's a couple of new shows like Believe. And what's that other one? Crisis on NBC right now.
Yeah.
That those are getting eaten up as soon as they show up. I mean, talk about like surprising me. 2 new dramas that on NBC that I'm like, wow, I really like these.
Hey, I've got a question for you about Believe. How many episodes have aired? Has it been 2?
I think it's 3.
Okay.
And you can watch them on NBC.com.
Yeah.
So like you could hook up your laptop, with an HDMI cable and just like watch them for free, or watch them just on your laptop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I saw the pilot, which was great, and then I saw the second episode. I felt like I had missed something in the middle, and so I was just wondering if I'd missed an episode or something.
I think that there's only been 3, and Crisis has only been 2.
Yeah.
So both of them are really solid shows, and which is why I'm thinking like maybe Almost Human needs to go. I've still got the last 2 episodes of Sleepy Hollow to watch on my DVR. Like that's how far behind I am on a lot of stuff. But Walking Dead there has to be something in it that I like, right? It's like as much as I can moan and bitch and cry about certain things or the way I think certain female characters are written, there has to be something in it that I'm getting out of it, and that must mean that it's a somewhat decent show in my opinion, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's what's nice is I think a lot of your early watching probably had to do with the goodwill that you extended from the comic, but now it's it's sort of earned its own place, which is damn nice to see.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Orphan Black?
Nope, never did.
Oh, you got to track that down, Paul. That's a good show.
I think it's on Netflix or something.
It may be on Netflix. You got it, because the season premiere is coming in like a couple of weeks, and give it like the first 2 or 3 episodes though, but you will see an actress who is just like amazing. She's amazing. You remember Dollhouse?
Yeah.
How we were all like kind of disappointed with Dollhouse because it was Eliza Dushku, and she wasn't that great an actress as far as like playing like different people. Like the actress on Orphan Black, I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. She's unbelievable. Like there's one episode where I think I actually turned to my wife, Amy, and I said, she's walking differently. Like I was blown away. Like I'm like, she's walking differently. Like she's supposed to be another person, and just like basically taking on mannerisms that are just like, whoa, this is different. So yeah, that's one to check out. I know you're backed up, but anyway, so I think we're renewed fans of The Walking Dead now.
Yeah, absolutely. The last, certainly I think the last like 4 episodes have really like taken it to a good place.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm really excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we talked about The Governor before, and I thought that, last the last, what was that, the first half of the season, I don't, I mean, I know that you may not have felt about them the way I did, but I really felt that those were really solid episodes because people were kind of making connections with each other. And like you said, I think that this last half season, them getting separated into smaller groups finally gave them the opportunity to breathe and, you know, have character development and connections that you didn't see when they were all smashed together. So I don't know how they're going to continue to do that, but you know, I'm on board. I'm really interested to see what happens. So they've really regained me as a fan, and I'm excited. So yeah, cool. All right. Well, anything else to say about Walking Dead or anything else in general right now, Paul?
October, you say?
I think it's October. It's going to be a long summer.
All right. Well, Mad Men.
Yeah, Mad Men, Orphan Black, and dude, there's a lot of new shows coming that look awesome too. Like, did you see the commercial for that one about? Well, there's one on HBO, and then there's one like Stand Up and Rise or something about like them inventing like the computer. Or...
No, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that in June.
Yeah, not to mention all those movies that I want to see too.
Yeah.
The one I want to try to see next weekend if I'm not working is
Oculus?
No, not Oculus. No. It's a
Captain
small.
America?
No, it's obviously Captain America. I mean that's a big one. But no, there's a small indie movie about a guy who goes into a bar and starts taking these crazy bets. And hang on, I'm gonna look this up because it's getting a lot of really, really good press and really good reviews.
He takes bets, and what happens?
He starts taking these. He runs into a couple who are sort of essentially rich psychopaths who start betting him to do progressively crazier things, and it's just a really cool. It sounds like almost like an old Twilight Zone story in a way.
Sounds awesome.
And it's called Where Are You?
Just when you need it, the internet fails you.
Just when I need it, it's like, what is the title of this? And I've been like,
you've been obsessing over
I've been
it.
like obsessing and thinking about this, for days, and now it's gone.
Cool. Well,
oh well.
Sorry to hear that. Well, we can, if you find it, send me the trailer, and we could post the name on the site when I put this up. Cool. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Part-Time Fanboy. I'm Kristian Horn, and that's Paul Edwards. And, thanks for joining us. And hopefully everyone out there enjoyed the finale of Walking Dead as much as we did. I think next week we're going to try and be back for Captain America, right?
I want to see it now.
Yes, I'm dying to see it. The reviews are good. We will have to wait. I've been reading Captain America like crazy too. So
yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, till next week, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Part-Time Fanboy.
Part-Time Fanboy doing my thing.
Doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. PartTimeFanboy.com